Hello and welcome to week 28, multi-agency or partnership working. So let's have a look at the questions for this week. One comes from Schools as Organisations, Unit 10, and two come from the Safeguarding Unit, Unit 2. So Schools as Organisations 2.2, identify external professionals who may work in education. This is an identify question, so really we'll need a list of different people, but that's going to come inside the other two questions. Safeguarding 2.4, describe the roles and responsibilities of the different organisations that may be involved when a child or young person has been abused or harmed. And 4.6, explain how serious case reviews inform practice. So we are going to look at all the different professionals who may work in education, specifically by doing a safeguarding case study. There are many different organisations involved in safeguarding, so that will cover all of these questions. Here's the worksheet for this week. So if you click on that, we'll go to the worksheet and just have a look. 2 pages here. If you fill in the boxes, you might need to expand them a bit as you find out more information. But as long as you've filled in these boxes, you will have answered the 3 questions. Let's have a look. Here are the questions, and it's asking you to describe the roles of different services. How do they work with schools? Because we're trying to say who are professionals who may work in education. And we want to know, how do they work preventatively to protect children in the first place, and reactively, if abuse has happened or is suspected, what would their role be? So we're going to look at social workers. They might visit school to support a child who the school have identified as being at risk. Who else would they work with and how? The police and the probation service. They have a special unit, the Child Abuse Investigation Unit. How would they work in a school? The police or the probation service. How would they work with the other services? Then we're going to look at the health service, health visitors and GPs. They might examine a child or young person who's been abused, or they might spot signs when they're just doing a routine checkup on a child. They might spot some signs of abuse. What other support would they offer to schools? Who else would they work with? Next one is CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. What does CAMS do? How would it work in a school? And then the third or voluntary sector, and we're going to specifically look at the NSPCC, National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Here's a link to the website. They've got lots and lots of information that would be helpful for this worksheet. How would the NSPCC work in a school? What support or training would they offer? And finally, the education service. These are all the different services that have to work together to prevent children from slipping through the gaps in the net. So we've looked at the other agencies, but the school is really important. Schools need to keep a child protection record, use cause for concern forms, write policy, make sure their staff are all trained. But here's a question. How or why might a TA work with some of these other agencies? Perhaps if they were the key worker for a particular child, they might be involved. And finally, all of these different agencies are coordinated by the local Safeguarding Children Board. And this is now known in Bristol as the KBSP. Here it is, look on the little logo, Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership. You might remember the case of Victoria Climbié from maybe 10, 15 years ago. She was a child who had been seen by the police. She had a social worker. She'd been in hospital and GP and health visitors had seen her. The school knew that there were problems and that she was not coming into school, but everybody was passing the buck. There was no coordinated multi-agency approach. And eventually, unfortunately, Victoria Climbié was so severely abused by her grandmother, who she was living with, I think it was her grandmother, maybe her aunt, that she died. So now we have the local authority sets up this local safeguarding children board to make sure that all these agencies work together. And nowadays things are much better. However, there are still cases where children are seriously abused or even die. If the agencies don't work well together, there will have to be a serious case review. This is an explain question. So you really need, but just in a few sentences, to explain how serious case reviews work. And the information you need for this you can get from the Louise Burnham textbook or from this document. Let's go back to Moodle and have a look. So we've got the questions. Identify is the first one. All the different agencies, you don't have to explain their roles, you just have to describe them. What do they do? The only explain one is this last question. There's your worksheet again. Now there's a document called Working Together to Safeguard Children. This gives guidance for all the different organisations. We looked at this last week. If you click on this, I have given you a page number to look at for each of those different agencies. That should make it easy for you. There's very basic information here from Louise Burnham's book on the different agencies, or a bit more detailed information on these links, these 4 links here. A day in the life of a social worker, information about child and adolescent mental health services, a link to the citizens' advice, information on the police, and what a school nurse, what services the school nurse might offer. Here's a link to the local Safeguarding Children Board, now known as KBSP. Click on this one, that will tell you about how all the agencies work together. And here we have what to do if they don't work, unfortunately, why you might need a serious case review. And this quote from Louise Burnham sums it up. And what she is saying is that if a child or young person has been significantly injured or has died, then you'll need a serious case review. And they're not there to hand out blame. They're there to improve practice so that in future, all these agencies can work better together. And if you'd like to look at some real examples of serious case reviews, there are some here. You could quote from one of these or use it as an example, because this is an explain question on the NSPCC website. So fill in the boxes, complete the worksheet and send it to me, and that will be these questions answered for this week.